Welcome to the Sports Watchdog Radio Show, hosted by Mason Kern. He keeps his nose to the ground to report on what's trending in professional and college sports, to inform, enlighten, and entertain. And now it's
the Sports Watchdog.
the Sports Watchdog, Mason Kern.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Sports Watchdog Radio Show on NBC Sports Radio AM 1060 Phoenix. I'm Mason Kern here with you every Sunday from 7:30 to 8 a.m. And I'm certainly glad you've joined me this morning. As always, I do have some great stuff in my kennel. Today we'll be hearing from Corey Jackson, the former NFLer, as well as Alex Wolf, the author and NBA writer. I'll also be covering some sports hot topics, and for you basketball-specific fans, interesting happenings on the Hardwood. So we get into sports hot topics this week with some trade news from the NFL and the MLB. We'll start with football, as Teddy Bridgewater, the former quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, has been traded to the New Orleans Saints, and he is going to be playing alongside Drew Brees, learning from one of the best quarterbacks of this generation, obviously Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers in that conversation as well. And speaking of Aaron Rodgers, a little side note here, he was paid this past week. He was really paid, making his money, over $100 million contract with a ton of money in that guaranteed. And this is just really a testament, I think, to the work that Rodgers has put in. So for so long, people have said Tom Brady is the quarterback of the generation, but I really think that Aaron Rodgers is in that debate, and I think that you can really argue that Aaron Rodgers is better than Tom Brady. Not saying that he is better than Tom Brady, saying that it can be argued that he can be in that conversation for not even just the best quarterback of this generation, but possibly the best quarterback of all time. Now, that was a little side note. Going back here, Teddy Bridgewater, once again, moving from Minnesota to New Orleans, will probably take the reins after we see Drew Brees' career come to an end. But New Orleans is saying, hey, it's really too early to talk extension with Teddy Bridgewater because they haven't even seen him play a game yet. So they're going to take their time, see how he can develop, and then, hey, maybe they'll give him an extension. Also, in football news, you have Aaron Donald on the Rams, just recently becoming the highest paid defenseman in the history of the NFL. $87 million guaranteed in his contract. That man made his money, and it's about time that we're seeing NFL players make contracts deserving for the work that they put in, because obviously the MLB, the NBA, getting so much salary for players and their contracts, and football has never really had those large-scale salaries. Starting to see that creep in a little bit here, but those are some pretty big deals going down in the NFL. In other trade news, we throw it on over to Major League Baseball, as the Yankees out of New York have kind of been struggling a little bit lately, losing some suspicious games to teams they probably should have beaten. And now is really not the best time to be having a cold spurt, because obviously trying to win the division, obviously Boston Red Sox have the lead there at number one. But the Yankees were only, I think, 5 or 6.5 games back. But they lose to the White Sox, they lose to the Tigers, and these are games that they really should be winning and trying to close the gap on a Boston team who has also been having a cold spurt lately. But obviously, I mean, the Yankees have had nearly half of their team, half of their offense, it seems, has been hurt lately, and so they went out and made a move. They went to San Francisco Giants. They got Andrew McCutchen out of San Francisco, on a trade for 2 prospects, minor league prospects, and Andrew McCutchen hasn't had the best year. I mean, obviously, his heyday is a little bit come and gone, but still a productive MLB player. 15 home runs so far on the year. That led the San Francisco Giants. Now he comes into a Yankee system where 15 home runs gets him 7th best on the team. So I really feel like they're trying to kind of make up for production from Aaron Judge's absence. Obviously, McCutchen won't fill that hole completely, but I think it's a step in the right direction. It's going to be really tough for them to make up that production that Aaron Judge gives the team. But Andrew McCutchen on his way to the Pinstripes. The Yankees trying to make a playoff push. All right, guys, let me know what you think about these and other trending sports hot topics on Twitter at @SportsWatchdog and on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, as well at The Sports Watchdog. But don't go away. The Sports Watchdog Radio Show on NBC Sports Radio AM 1060 will be right back after this short break.
If you're losing your hair or notice that it's getting thinner, listen closely. You can do something about it without messy lotions or drugs. Now you can get clinically proven hair growth results at home with the Hair Max Laser. Hair Max delivers nourishing laser light energy to stimulate hair growth right at the roots. It's FDA cleared, recommended by doctors, and best of all, it has an amazing 93% success rate in clinical studies in both men and women, so you can be sure it works. Use it just 3 times a week and experience new hair growth, increased density, and healthier, fuller, more attractive hair in just weeks with a 5-month money-back guarantee. Now, for a limited time, save 15% on your Hair Max order at hairmax.com. Type in code RADIO at checkout or call 1-800-9REGROW. That's hairmax.com code RADIO or 1-800-9REGROW. Experience real hair growth and save 15% with Hair Max.
Hey there, welcome back. You're listening to the Sports Watchdog Radio Show on NBC Sports Radio AM 1060 Phoenix. I'm your host, Mason Kern, and joining us now on the line is Jeff Byers, a former NFL offensive lineman and the current CEO of AMP Human Performance. Jeff played collegiate football at USC from 2004 to 2009, where he helped win the 2004 National Championship as well as 3 Rose Bowls throughout his tenure on the O-line. Jeff then moved on to the NFL, where he would play for both the Denver Broncos and the Carolina Panthers before retiring in 2014. After retiring, Jeff joined the founding team of Ampersand Biopharmaceuticals, a privately held early-stage company focused on bioavailability challenges. Shortly after joining, he founded his own company, AMP Human Performance. So Jeff is here today to talk more about his football career and transitioning from sports to becoming a CEO. So Jeff, how did your time then as a football player then prepare you for the challenges that are different in being a CEO?
Yeah, I think there's just so many similarities when you're expected to be performing at a high level, right? In the NFL, I never went into any season as a starter. Stress level high always, and even when you're like the shoe-in starter, your stress level is high. So it teaches you really, right? Pro sports or sports at a high level teaches you how to deal with stress and to function under stress and to function at a really, really high level, at the highest level under stress. And those types of skills, those intangible things, I think like effort, grit, right, dealing with stress and your attitude are such important things when you're talking about running a business, starting a business, or any of that. It's just, those are so many of the intangible keys to success that sports in general teach us. And I was lucky enough to really experience and get good at through sports, and it made me be able to really accelerate my business career much faster than normal, and just got lucky in a few places too to be in the right place at the right time.
Right, and that's just how it happens sometimes in terms of kind of just being at the right place at the right time. And once again, this is Jeff Byers, former NFL offensive lineman turned CEO of AMP Human Performance. Now, Jeff, are there any then examples of how you've kind of applied the dedication and grit needed to be competitive in football then to running a successful startup? Because obviously running your own company and your own business isn't easy. So how did you start from the building it from the ground up?
Well, I took at it, and there's 2 things that I really learned through sport, and that there's very little in life that's really important that you actually can control, and those 2 things are your attitude and your effort. And for me, like every day I go into the office, I'm going to outwork everybody, and I'm going to have a damn smile on my face and just be happy, right? Because it is an amazing opportunity, and right, your attitude, is the head that leads the dog. And so for me, I've just said every day I walk in, I might not be the smartest, I might not have the most experience, but I will outwork you, I'll out-hustle you, and I will be in a better mindset and just fight through the tough times harder than anybody else will. And that's really the kind of the culture that we've established within the team that I've built around this company, and it's it's all about attitude, effort, grit, hard work.
Right, yeah, and I mean that's kind of the mindset you have to have in terms of all those attributes in both football and then business as well. Now, if you could go back and go to your younger self, 16, and you say, wow, this is how my life turned out, what advice would you give to yourself, and could you imagine yourself where you are now?
Wow, at 16, I was, man, that's a tough question. I would probably slap my 16-year-old self and tell me to stop being such a punk all the time. No, I would just say, hey, like you got to learn to roll with the punches. Not everything goes as planned. There are major hiccups and forks in the road. That right at the end of the day, don't worry about what other people think. Worry about what matters is how you value yourself, right? Be happy with you. Because when you start to do things to please other people is when you go down a bad road. At the end of the day, if you look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I had a heck of a day and I did my best, that's all that really matters. And I think really, culturally and from a society perspective, like we have this, we put this pressure on young kids in sport to perform, and they're performing not for themselves, but for others, for their parents or their coaches. And really at the end of the day, it's about you. And you have to be happy with yourself, and you're the only one that can know that. And so, just to reiterate, what I would say to my 16-year-old self is make sure you're doing right by you, right? Because that's the number one thing. If you do right by you, you're doing right by everybody else. Be happy with yourself. So,
right.
Anyways.
Yeah, and I think that's good advice just in general, not even just looking back, but I mean, as life goes on, I mean, I think that's pretty good advice overall. Now, as you look back then, as we are looking back to young Jeff, you look back to football player Jeff, then can you give me your favorite moment from your NFL career?
Oh, man. There's a couple. Right, I started 7-8 games in the NFL, not a whole bunch. I was a swing offensive lineman and was hurt a bit as well in there.
It happens, yeah.
But I had some really cool opportunities because I was a swing offensive lineman. I got to play 3 snaps of defensive line on the goal line against Atlanta, and I just happened to be going against my left tackle from college. That I played next to.
Wow.
Which is right. I'm an offensive lineman. I was a guard center, and on the goal line. But we had defensive linemen hurt. So it's funny to say, like, my most memorable, really the thing I thought was the coolest thing I did in the NFL was I got to play 3 snaps of defensive line on the goal line against the guy I played next to, for 3 years in college, essentially.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
So you look back then, and obviously you had so much success in college at USC. So what would you say is one of your top moments there?
Oh, that's a really, really tough one. I was very lucky to be in the golden years of USC, which
right.
It looks like they're coming back really, really strong. Personally, I would just say my best moment as an individual was I had 2 really, really serious injuries in college, was actually just coming back and playing. But from a team perspective, my most memorable experience was it was my last year. We were playing Ohio State, and we had Matt Barkley was a true freshman quarterback starting, and we drove it down at the end of the game to win the game with a freshman quarterback kind of under my wing, and it was, to me, that was really, really, really special, especially at a place like Ohio State to do that and kind of just take the game away from them at the last second.
Yeah, that's definitely really cool. Well, Jeff, we're running out of time. Thank you so much again. Where can our listeners go to get more info or just to connect with you?
Yeah, check out our website. It's amphumanperformance.com. We are kind of going through a brand transition right now, but there'll be a lot of information there, and you can learn more about what we're doing and as we continue to evolve and some of the athletes and teams we're working with as well.
Sounds good. Thank you so much again for your time, Jeff. All right, everyone, the Sports Watchdog Radio Show on NBC Sports Radio, AM 1060. We'll be right back after this short break.
If you're ready for a boast-worthy staycation, the AAA Four Diamond Hermosa Inn, located in Scottsdale's Paradise Valley, is for you. This luxury hotel offers authentic Arizona character and charm. Its 43 newly renovated casitas are nestled in a garden setting with breathtaking views of the lush desert and Camelback Mountain. Most accommodations include deep soaking tubs, beehive fireplaces, and private patios. Other property features include a lively bar and communal seating areas, on-site painting classes, free-use beach cruisers, seasonal poolside yoga, hot tub facilities, a business suite, and dining to die for. The Hermosa Inn is an ideal locale for small group getaways, from weddings, intimate family vacations, and bachelorette weekends, even golf outings, board meetings, and executive retreats. And its award-winning on-site restaurant, Lawns, is renowned for globally inspired Arizona fare, complemented by a subterranean wine cellar. You can see amazing photos of this and much more at hermosainn.com. That's hermosainn.com.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome back. Once again, you're listening to the Sports Watchdog Radio Show on NBC Sports Radio, AM 1060 Phoenix. I'm your host, Mason Kern, and joining us now is Alan Santana, a former professional boxer and a man of many hats, from author to entrepreneur and CEO to everything in between. Alan had over 200 amateur fights and turned pro in 1987, taking on the ring named the Matinee Idol. His professional record fell to 8-1-1 and is a renowned boxing icon. So Alan is here today to share some insight into the state of boxing as it stands today versus when he was fighting in the late 80s and early 90s. Hey Alan, welcome to the Sports Watchdog Radio Show. So glad you could be here.
Hey, thanks for having me on. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for asking. Thank you for taking the time. Now, Alan, I want to start off by asking, what would you do? It's kind of a heavier question to start things off, but what would you do if you could go back and kind of change boxing how it is today versus when you were fighting in the ring?
Well, I would make sure that it was regulated properly, first of all. And I'm going back to when I was fighting, okay? So regulate it. Make sure that fighters have insurance, health insurance, and a retirement policy set in place, or some type of a plan, because we do not have that even today.
Right. And it seems like in today's version of the sport, there seems to be a lot of controversy sometimes. So in your opinion now, do you think there is that corruption or controversy in boxing?
Yeah, I like to call it toxicity. I guess you could say boxing is toxic. And it exists today. It's very toxic. There's a lot of things that are going on that, for example, we have the Ali Act in place. A lot of guys don't even know what the Ali Act is, and that law is broken almost every time there's a fight put on,
Right, yeah. So what is the Ali Act then? Can you go on and explain that a little bit?
Well, the Ali Act is to protect fighters, to make sure that, for example, that promoters are not managing the fighters and that they're just promoting the fighters. So there's a lot of rules there, to protect fighters. And again, those rules are broken. You want to call it the law, I should say. They're broken. You have guys out there that are promoting, or let's say they are advising fighters, and ultimately they're the promoter as well. So they're being taken advantage on the front end and the back end. And then there's other issues. There's contract issues. There's the issue again with some type of a retirement plan for fighters, with some type of a health insurance. One of the biggest issues that I have today is when you see these rap artists, for example, coming into the sport with, they're multimillionaires already. They're making money off the backs of these fighters. There was one prime example, and I can't think of the fighter's name right offhand, but he was a Latin kid, got hurt. He literally almost died. They had to rush him out of the ring into the hospital, and this particular rap artist who was a promoter, they walked away from him, and they basically left him in the hospital with all of his hospital bills, and they figured, hey, he's useless to us anymore, so let's walk away. And, that's where there's a big problem.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that seems like an issue that would definitely need to be looked at and needs correction. Now, how then do you go about educating these fighters and going about trying to solve these problems, in your opinion?
Well, one of the ways that I felt it necessary to try and educate these fighters was by sitting down and writing a book. My book titled Unprotected. I felt that was a good way to protect these fighters. And what I did is I went in and I basically have 12 chapters, And instead of calling them chapters, I went round 1 through round 12 in the book.
That's funny.
And I talk about the history of the sport. I talk about how you basically will register yourself as, you incorporate yourself, and how to read contracts, how to dress, how to speak. So all that stuff's in the book. These are things that they don't teach in today's world. In high school, they don't teach you that stuff. And this is things that you have to learn. Unless you know about it, you're going to be taken advantage of. So that's why I put this stuff all in a book.
Right, and that seems very helpful, and definitely would recommend these fighters and really anyone who just kind of wants an inside glimpse to get a copy and read it. But as you look then toward that education factor for these fighters, it's not just really about what they're doing in the ring, but they also have to be looking at after their career, after they retire, in the business side, not just of sport, but also just in their next step. So how do you kind of go about trying to get them to look at their futures at the same time?
Well, again, you think when you're fighting, you think that you're gonna fight forever. You don't realize at that time how fast the years go by. So one day you're 20, the next thing you know you're 40, okay, and you've long retired. What we need to teach these fighters is how to put some money away, maybe invest their money, put it in some type of a money market or a mutual fund. That way they have this money later on when they need it. I see so many fighters and athletes as well, basketball players and baseball players and beyond that again, they make millions upon millions of dollars, and they get taken advantage of. And at the end of their careers, they're out of money, or their money will run out over time.
Right, and that seems like a very common factor, like you said, across all sports, not just boxing. But as you look then, Alan, at kind of the fighters of today, obviously when you were fighting, it was in a different era of the sport. So how do you kind of compare the fighters of today to the fighters of yesterday?
That's a tough question, because people think by coming up with new modern training techniques that it's going to improve a fighter. That doesn't improve fighters. We're old school. You go back, you get up, you do your road work, you do your 2-3 hours in the gym every day, and you train rigorously. I think that today's fighters compared to, let's call them yesteryear's fighters, guys of our era, my era, I don't think they would stand up to guys of our era, because it's a different time, different training methods. And plus, back in that day, you used to fight 15 rounds. And I never went 15 rounds, but I couldn't, guys today have no idea what it would be to go 15 rounds. They only go 12 rounds today.
Right.
So if they had to go that extra 3 rounds, I see guys, getting tired out in the fifth, the 6th, 7th round, and sometimes the 10th round, they're already dead tired. I couldn't see how those guys would even ever make it to 15 rounds. So I don't think that the fighters of today, there are a few exceptions, but most guys, they wouldn't be able to stand up against the guys back that fought in the 80s. There's no way.
Right, yeah, and there's been a lot of changes in terms of rules and training, like you say, in terms of trying to adapt to modern times. Now, obviously, this sport has a high risk factor. It's fighting, so there's obviously a lot of risk that goes along with that. But how then would you kind of compare that to some of the other sports? Take for the NFL, for example, they're trying to make rule changes in terms of concussions and all this kind of stuff. So the unspoken kind of damage of boxing, what do you think fighters can learn from the NFL or from these other leagues that are trying to implement like safety protocols?
Well, I think, again, we can talk about the NFL and the concussion lawsuits that are going on and the damage that these players have taken on as they retire. They get concussions while they're playing. I think, boxing is a lot worse than playing in the NFL, because
right.
You got to think about it. Fighters are taking punches throughout, their training, while they're training for a fight and preparing. When they get in the ring, they're they're fighting now, so they're even taking sometimes worse punishment.
Of course.
But most of that punishment, believe it or not, takes place in the gym. And so I'm going to talk about what we're doing now. I'm involved with a company as a spokesperson by the name of Blackout Fight Gear. I'm proud to be the spokesperson for that because of what they're doing. They've modified the headgear. You look at boxing equipment, and it really hasn't evolved over the past, say, 40, 50 years. A headgear is a headgear.
Right.
Even boxing gloves. So we have some top-notch equipment that will actually help save and protect the lives of these fighters and these athletes. Now, we work with MMA athletes as well as martial arts athletes and professional boxers and amateur boxers. So this headgear, again, we talk about concussions, will actually prevent that. We're saying that it will help minimize that. I shouldn't say prevent it, but it will minimize the damage that's done to these guys inside of the ring when they're training and preparing for fights.
And I think really that's the only thing you can do. I mean, at some point, you'd love to get to a point where these injuries can be prevented. But, I mean, the athletes who partake in this sport kind of know the risk, and they go about it anyway. But it's great to know that protocols are being implemented, especially by you guys that are trying to help minimize that damage. Well, Alan, we're running out of time. Thank you so much for your time. Where can our listeners go to get more info or just connect with you?
They can go to www.alansantana.com. Or they can go to blackoutfightgear.com, and there they can find out more about our equipment. They can find out more about me. They can purchase my book there online. And if they want another place they can get my book would be through Amazon and Barnes & Noble. So it's online, available there at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I'd urge anybody that's thinking of going to any professional sport to purchase this book and read it, because it will help in their careers. It will help with their futures.
Well, there you go, guys. Make sure to go check that out. Alan, thank you so much again for your time. All right, everyone. The Sports Watchdog Radio Show on NBC Sports Radio and 1060 Phoenix will be right back after another quick break.
If you're a DJ, karaoke enthusiast, singer-songwriter, or band seeking a rechargeable and portable PA system, then Voco Pro's Drifter is for you. The convertible all-in-one karaoke and PA system with microphone offers wider and better sound coverage, and with a multicolor LED light effect. Get hours of entertainment through Drifter's built-in USB, MP3 player, FM, and line inputs, while Bluetooth connectivity accesses thousands of YouTube karaoke songs via tablet or smartphone, all at the lowest price ever. Learn more at VocoPro.com.
You ready to hoop it up? This is Happenings on the Hardwood.
All right, guys, as always, the end of the Sports Watchdog Radio Show on NBC Sports Radio, AM 1060 Phoenix. We're going to pivot on over to the Hardwood, talk some basketball, and honestly, I mean, not too much news coming in the way of the NBA this week. I mean, obviously not in the season for college basketball either, but as we look toward October, toward the start of the season, I mean, you've seen some pretty marquee matchups appear on the schedule. Some teams who have kind of rebolstered, some teams who have kind of fallen off. Most recently, though, in the way of trade news, I should say, your Phoenix Suns have made a trade in the way of Marquise Chris, their former 2016 lottery pick, who came after Dragan Bender at number 4. They used their number 8 selection in 2016 on Marquise Chris. It's been an up and down road, hasn't been super consistent throughout his 2, maybe 3 years playing now, I guess. But hasn't been awful, and they knew he was going to be a project because he hadn't played basketball too much before. He was a football player. Crazy bounce. Anyway, they trade Marquise Chris to the Houston Rockets for Ryan Anderson and another not really well-known player. But they also, in that deal, gave up Brandon Knight. And this really seems like a contract-shedding deal, even though they're picking up Ryan Anderson's ungodly contract. They've been able to decrease that $21 million guarantee down to $15 million guarantee, and that about equals what they owed Brandon Knight, who hadn't played, I think, really at all last year due to injury. So they get rid of Brandon Knight, and they get rid of their 2016 number 8 draft pick in Marquise Chris, send him over to Houston for Ryan Anderson, who really is going to basically be let go after this year. He only has 1 year remaining on his deal, which, like I said, is guaranteed. And I think this really is a move that's going to benefit Chris because he hasn't really fit in well to the Suns system. Granted, the Suns have not been winning. So being surrounded by the likes of Chris Paul and James Harden, I think those guys are going to make him better. It's going to be maybe not a new Lob City like Chris Paul had in Los Angeles with the Clippers, but you might see some high-flying action from Chris, who will be a nice utility piece off the bench, especially because they lost Trevor Ariza and Luke Richard Mbah-a-Moute earlier this year. So, trying to rebolster some pieces there. I don't think the Rockets will make the finals. I don't think they'll be as dominant in the West because those role players are missing. But I think Chris will be able to serve a little bit of a hole in their bench unit. So Houston picking up Marquise Chris, the Suns picking up Ryan Anderson. And yeah, let me know what you guys think about this move and any other basketball inquiries on social media. Well, that's a wrap, everyone. Anybody wanting to connect with me, the Sports Watchdog, on Twitter can do so at A Sports Watchdog, and on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube as well at The Sports Watchdog. So until next time, keep your eye on the ball.
The Sports Watchdog. The Sports Watchdog, Ace and Kern.